3 spine-chilling true countryside horrors that will haunt you until they are exposed. The Thompsons pulled their moving truck into the overgrown driveway of their new home in Pine Hollow, a farmhouse that had seen better days. The peeling paint and sagging roof glared under the fading sunlight, like a warning. Sarah, a devoted mother, felt a mix of thrill and dread wash over her. They had traded bustling city life for this sleepy town, known for its picturesque beauty and friendly locals. Still, as dusk blanketed the hills, shadows deepened around the house, wrapping it in a layer of unease that crawled up her spine. "Mom!" Emily shouted, dragging Sarah's attention away from the oppressive silence surrounding them. But before Sarah could respond, her heart jolted. In the quiet, she had almost heard whispers lurking just beyond the trees. She shook it off, telling herself it was just a figment of her imagination. Yet with every creak of the old house, each gust of wind, the random motions of branches against the windows felt deliberate, taunting. Once inside, they began unpacking. As Sarah rifled through a dusty drawer, she stumbled upon a series of crumpled papers hidden at the back. With shaky hands, she unraveled one. It was scribbled in chaotic handwriting warnings about the dark hearts of Pine Hollow. The tales spoke of children vanishing, of families who simply disappeared overnight. She dismissed them as local folklore, remnants of restless minds, or maybe even a prank left from the previous owners. Days turned to nights, and as they settled into their lives, an undercurrent of dread began to creep into Sarah's consciousness. Then on a chilly Wednesday evening, Jake headed to the corner store. Hours went by, and panic fluttered in Sarah's chest as darkness cloaked the world outside. She called Mark, her husband, who returned home right after a long day of work. "He's just lost track of time," Mark assured her, but Sarah's gut twisted as worry gnawed at her. Before the sun fell completely, they knocked on neighbors' doors, seeking answers. All were friendly but wore hollow smiles that unnerved her. "Oh, teenage boys can be so unpredictable," one woman said, her eyes darting away, an unsettling glimmer in her expression. The local sheriff, a childhood friend of Mark's, laughed it off, as if the situation were a joke. "Don't worry. He'll be back." But that hollow laugh sent a chill racing through her blood, a hint that something was deeply wrong. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As hours passed with no sign of Jake, dread wrapped tighter around Sarah's heart. Soon, whispers from other parents, stories of disappearances and eerie local myths flooded her mind. "It's common around here," one mother whispered, eyes wide, "but no one talks about it." Like a puzzle, clues fell into place, tales of families gone in a blink. Determination surged through her, pushing an urgency deeper than fear. The farmhouse, time-worn and worn, had its own mysteries, calling for exploration. That's when she found the cellar, a dusty trapdoor that seemed to beckon her in. Inside, remnants of childhood lost stared back, dusty toys and fading photographs. A journal, its spine broken, held accounts of families that vanished. Heart racing, she flipped pages, gripping the edge of the wooden desk, all signs pointing to a darkness hidden deep within Pine Hollow's idyllic charm. Suddenly, creaking echoed from above, and dread coursed like venom in her veins. Outside, laughter reached her ears, chilling in its familiarity. It was the sound of children playing, but in that moment, they didn't feel like strangers. Suddenly, she was overwhelmed with the realization that the darkness didn't just want her son, it wanted their family. Her shoulders hunched with fear as she turned back to the cellar, heart pounding in sync with the laughter fading into the night. Who could she trust, and would they be the next ones to vanish into the shadows? The weight of her new reality settled in heavy silence, each breath feeling like a countdown. Amid the oppressive stillness that enveloped the Thompsons' farmhouse, Sarah was left with a decision that rattled her to the core. Fear gripped her throat like a vice. She had to find Jake. Instinct clawed at her. Something sinister was playing out in these woods, and she couldn't let it swallow her family. The laughter from outside pulsed like a heartbeat, inviting yet foreboding. With trembling hands, she pushed open the cellar door, the creak echoing against the stone walls. She stepped into the dim light, her heart racing louder with each step. Dust coated everything, thick and suffocating, but the old journal was a beacon of urgency. Maybe it could provide answers. Flipping through its yellowed pages, she absorbed the stories of the lost families. Each account told of joy turned to despair, horrifying last entries detailing shadows that reached from the depths of Pine Hollow's forest. They linger, one passage read, awaiting the next to give them voice. Each word was a thread pulling her deeper into an abyss marked by the desperate echoes of the previous residents. Suddenly, the laughter morphed. It was no longer innocent. It twisted, wrapping around her, beckoning her outside. Panic surged. Hadn't she told her husband to stay close, to keep Emily safe? She couldn't shake the growing certainty that her family was in more danger than she'd ever conceived. Outside, the world was cloaked in darkness, and shadows danced with the wisps of fading light. The same trees that stood tall and welcoming seemed to sway almost menacingly now. Clutching the journal, Sarah stepped cautiously onto the porch. A chill raced through her bones. Where were the other kids? Why was no one out looking for Jake? The laughter echoed again, but this time it felt closer, more sinister. She leaned over the railing, the air thickening as she scanned the yard, heart hammering in her chest. Her breath hung in the cool air. Panic gave way to clarity. There was a small clearing behind the barn, the direction from which the laughter resounded. Sarah's feet moved before her mind could protest. Each footfall felt heavy, the ground almost pulling her back as if resisting her approach. With the journal clutched tightly, she raced toward the clearing, the rhythmic laughter morphing into a cacophony. Each giggle churned her stomach, tapping into some primal fear. What if they had taken Jake? And then she saw them, figures enveloped in the shadows, dancing. They looked like children, but their faces were distorted, grinning with predatory glee. They bounced around a flickering light, a lantern casting a glow that felt too inviting yet utterly wrong. "Jake!" she called, voice strained and desperate, breaking the haunting symphony of laughter. They turned in unison, their smiles widening with unnatural glee, eyes glinting like tiny stars in the darkness. It was then she understood, these were not the lost souls searching for her son. They were the mirage, the lure. A whisper slithered through the trees, barely above a breath. "Join us." Her skin crawled. This was a trap, a lure designed to draw her in. The shadows contorted, swirling around her legs as she felt something tug at her mind, beckoning. In that moment of horror, the ground beneath her feet shifted. The air tightened, her world began to pull inward. She stumbled back, heart racing, terror clenching at her throat. "No!" she screamed, stumbling away, the wrongness of it threatening to consume her whole. Was there still time? Could she save Jake? She turned to flee, but a chilling realization clawed at her. The laughter had grown louder, and the night was closing in. As Sarah sprinted back toward the house, the lantern flickered one last time, illuminating the twisted faces of children laughing in malicious delight. More than just shadows called from the woods. Something dark lay waiting in Pine Hollow with insatiable hunger. Would she find Jake before the lingering darkness devoured them all? The answer lurked just behind the trees, whispering promises she dared not chase. Terror gripped her, for the chase was only just beginning. Sarah stumbled back to the farmhouse, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The laughter was a cruel wind at her back, pushing her toward darkness. She fumbled her way through the door, slamming it shut behind her, and felt a shiver skitter up her spine. The house felt colder than it had moments ago, the walls creaking as if they too were alive, whispering their own terrors. She leaned against the door, breathing heavily, trying to will the panic out of her mind. She glanced at the journal on the table, its pages fluttering slightly as though stirred by an unseen breath, beckoning her once again. "Keep it together, Sarah," she muttered to herself, her voice a tremor. She had to figure out what was happening. Had they taken Jake? She forced herself to focus, thinking of all that the journal had revealed. The darkness was not just hungry, it was patient. The door rattled, a violent tremor that shot through her like ice. She froze. The malevolent laughter swirled outside, wrapping around the windows like vines. Each laugh felt like a cold finger pressing against the glass. She took a step back, dread pooling in her stomach. "Jake!" she shouted, her voice cracking. "Emily!" Silence followed. Then, a soft thump echoed from the back of the house. Heart racing, Sarah crept toward the sound, her mind racing with images of the laughing children, those twisted smiles, those darkened eyes. "Mama!" a voice called. It was small, weak. "Emily! Emmy?" She rushed to the source of the sound, finding a sliver of light in the corner where the back door creaked open. The breeze carried the scent of damp earth and something else, something rancid that churned her stomach. "Come here," Sarah whispered urgently, peering into the doorway. She could see Emily's silhouette, small and fragile. But as Sarah reached for her, the darkness deepened behind her daughter, the air thick and syrupy, almost pulsating with malice. "Emmy, come inside," she urged, terror clawing at her throat. "Mommy, help me." Emily stepped forward, but something or someone was in the shadows with her. Sarah could feel it, a presence, heavy and thick. The journal slipped from her fingers, falling to the floor, the pages flipping through the designs of despair it had chronicled. In the dim light, Sarah felt the menacing energy escalate as the figures she thought were only outside now hovered right behind Emily, their laughter merging into a single entity, sinister and vibrant. "Come join us, little girl," a voice cooed, a warped version of innocence that made Sarah's skin crawl. "It'll be fun. Don't listen to them, Emmy. Run!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Emily's eyes flicked back toward the shadows as if caught in a trance. "But they're my friends, no." Sarah lunged forward, reaching for her daughter. In that moment, the shadows lunged too, twisting into a grotesque mass. They reached for Emily, but Sarah was faster, gripping her daughter's arm just in time. The child screamed, the sound echoing and spiraling into the night, piercing Sarah's heart like a dagger, but before she could pull Emmy back fully, a chill seized Sarah's heart. The mass of shadows shrieked, hissing like 1,000 snakes, tangled in anger. Sarah felt herself pulled as if the shadows were steel chains wrapping around her limbs. She leaned back, fighting with all her strength, but their force tugged at her mind, whispering promises of joy that made no sense. "Mommy, it hurts," Emily cried, and the intensity of her daughter's fear lit a fire within Sarah. With a surge of primal strength, Sarah yanked Emily backward, freeing her from the clutch of darkness. But in that frantic push, she felt a sharp pain at her side. With horror, she realized one shadow had slipped past her defenses, a thin tendril winding around her waist, drawing her into the chill of the night. The house trembled, and the laughter outside swirled like a storm. "Run, Emmy! Get out!" Sarah screamed, pulling against the dark grip, but it only tightened, consuming her breath, pulling her into a vortex of fear and despair. As Emily fled. The laughter rose, wrapping around Sarah like a shroud. She was losing herself, and she knew it. The forest awaited with hungry anticipation, shadows stretching to receive her. In the last moment of clarity, just as her vision became a tapestry of darkness, a final, horrific whisper reached her ears. Welcome home. What lay beyond the veil of shadows? What would become of Emily? Time was running out, and the darkness had no intention of letting them go. Sarah felt the darkness consume her, a suffocating blanket of terror wrapped around her mind. The laughter echoed like a storm, relentless and deafening, pulling her into a whirlpool of despair. She clutched at the tendril that had ensnared her waist, panic surging through her veins. It constricted tighter, the chill seeping deeper into her bones. Emmy. The sound of her daughter's name sliced through the cacophony. Images of Emily, her bright smile, the way she twirled in the sunlight fueled Sarah's will to fight. She had to keep her daughter safe. The tendril hissed, its voice a venomous whisper. She's with us now. You can't have her back. No. Sarah screamed, her voice raw, desperate. She felt the memory of warmth fading. I want to let you take her. With every ounce of strength left in her, Sarah pulled against the darkness, clawing at the air. But the shadows only laughed, the sound weaving itself into the fabric of her thoughts, twisting reality. She could almost see their faces twisted and gleeful, eyes glinting with wicked delight. In a heartbeat, the world around her shifted. The farmhouse blurred into something darker, a long-abandoned cellar. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of decay. Flickering shadows danced against the dirt walls, their movements erratic and hostile. A low, guttural growl rolled through the dark, reverberating in her bones. Where am I? Sarah's heart raced, confusion battling her dread. She could still hear the laughter, now mingling with the growls, becoming a symphony of horror. Join us, the shadows urged, gliding closer. We can be free together. A sudden burst of clarity pierced through as she remembered the journal, the truth hidden within its crumbling pages. The shadows drew nearer, dark fingers stretched out, eager to embrace her. She needed to resist. The journal contained a way to fight back, a promise of salvation, a chance for Emily. Sarah focused her thoughts, battling the weight of despair. With trembling hands, she fished out the journal buried deep in her mind, the words swirling back into her memory as if alive. Evil thrives on fear, she whispered, channeling the found strength. You feed on sorrow. I want to give you anything. The shadows jerked, a moment of hesitation, and she seized it. Begone! She commanded, and with every fiber of her being, she screamed into the darkness, leave us alone. The atmosphere shifted, the shadows recoiled momentarily, confusion rippling through their mass. Sarah felt the tendril loosen. Just as she thought she was gaining ground, laughter erupted, now shrill and mocking, booming around her. Do you think you can resist us? You're ours. They lunged, claws extended, ready to pull her back into the void. She fought harder, a primal scream erupting from her chest as she concentrated on Emily, on saving her. Suddenly, an image broke through the door of the cellar creaking open, a fragile light spilling into the darkness. Emmy? She called, voice echoing in the recesses. Can you hear me? Mommy. The small voice broke through, weak but clear, cutting through the oppressive laughter. Get to the door. Find the light. A piece of hope sparked within Sarah, filling her with rebellious rage against the shadows. Without thinking, she turned toward the flickering light. The darkness shrieked, a furious wind swirling around her, trying to claw her back. But she could see Emily standing there, small and terrified but determined. Fear twisted in Sarah's gut, pushing her legs forward, stumbling into the purifying light that threatened to dissolve the shadows. As she advanced, she felt the binding tendril slip away. We will not let you go. The voices screamed, switching from laughter to rage, fury coating their words like venom. Sarah surged forward, fueled by anger and love for her daughter, the light enveloping her. Just before she crossed through, she turned back and spat defiantly, You win. We're stronger than you. In that moment of rebellion, the shadows screamed, their forms flickering and writhing against the encroaching light. Sarah burst out of the cellar, pulling Emily into her arms. The rush of fresh air was intoxicating. Gasping, they stumbled into the night, the laughter fading into the trees behind them. But something was different. The darkness had not vanished, it lingered just out of sight like a predator watching its prey. Did we escape? Emily asked, breathless and wide-eyed. Sarah tightened her grip around her daughter. I don't know, sweetheart. But we can't stop running. As they raced away from the farmhouse, the shadows shifted closer, the forest breathing with an unsettling energy. They could feel it watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The question hung in the air like a thick fog. Had they truly escaped? Or was this just the beginning of a far greater nightmare? What awaited them in the cold, deep woods? What darker traps lay in silence, just out of reach? Trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky, casting jagged shadows on the ground. The forest felt alive, twisting and shifting, as if the very earth was aware of their fear. Sarah clutched Emily tightly, every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made her heart pound harder. We need to find a safe place, Sarah whispered, desperation coloring her voice. Her breath came in short gasps, the chill of the night air seeped into her bones, mixing with the dread that clung to her like a second skin. Mommy, I'm scared, Emmy said, trembling against her. The innocence in her voice stabbed at Sarah's heart. A mother's instinct surged within her, clashing with the terror that dripped from the shadows. Just hold on to me, Sarah said, squeezing her daughter tighter. I won't let anything happen to you. She forced her feet forward, determined to escape. But the forest seemed to shift with every step. The path twisted, like a snake coiling around them, leading them deeper into darkness. Where are we going? Emily asked, eyes wide with fear. I don't know, Sarah admitted, her voice trembling. Panic threatened to overtake her. A sinister energy coiled in the air, pressing against her mind. The darkness whispered again, sweet yet poisonous. You cannot run from us. We are everywhere. Shut up. Sarah screamed, desperate to silence the voices. The shadows danced along the trees, taunting her, dragging her thoughts into dark corners. She pressed forward, her heart screaming danger. The path ended abruptly at a small clearing, moonlight spilling down like a blessing. It momentarily calmed her racing heart. We'll rest here for a moment, she said, trying to sound brave. But as soon as they paused, the oppressive darkness slid closer, wrapping around them like a snake preparing to strike. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, indistinct and ragged. It was the outline of a woman, eyes glinting like shards of glass. You thought you could escape? You belong to the night now. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. What do you want? Her voice was barely a whisper, fear coiling around her words. To join us, the figure hissed, laughter echoing in her throat. To quench the hunger that eats at your soul. The figure took a step forward, and the air filled with cold dread. Mommy! Emily cried, clinging to her leg. Stay behind me! Sarah shouted, instinctively shielding Emily. She remembered the journal, the words that had once given her strength. Evil thrives on fear, she muttered under her breath, clenching her fists. But the shadows swirled with wicked delight, pulling at her thoughts, feeding on her panic. You're too late. The darkness is already in you. A cold wind rushed through the clearing, chilling them to the core. Sarah realized the figure was no longer alone, shapes began to emerge from the shadows, grotesque and twisted. Their shapes shuddered and pulsated, eyes gleamed, hungry for despair. We will feast. They chanted, voices merging into a horrifying harmony. Back! Stay back! Sarah shouted, raw terror slicing through her. She reached for the journal in her mind, trying to summon its power. We are stronger than you. The shadows recoiled but pressed forward in a surge, darkness wrapping around her limbs like icy chains. Sarah could feel Emily trembling behind her. Desperation ignited a spark within her. Knowing she couldn't rely only on words, she took a shaky step forward. With fierce determination, she yelled, "You will not take my daughter." The shadows hesitated, a chorus of confusion rippling through them. Sarah dove toward the beckoning moonlight, pulling her daughter behind her as she battled against the insidious bounds of darkness enveloping them. "Run!" Sarah cried, sprinting for the clearing's edge and dragging Emily with her. They dashed through the moonlit path, the forest growing thicker and darker behind them. The laughter grew distant, but Sarah knew the danger was not over. The air pulsed with an unholy energy, the shadows lurking, waiting for their next chance. "Mommy, what's happening?" Emily whimpered, but Sarah couldn't spare a moment to respond. All around them, the trees seemed to close in, the ground swallowing their tread. Breathless and wild, they burst through the trees onto a dirt road, the dark forest shrieking behind them. A dim flashlight flickered in the distance, a pinprick of hope. "Someone's there." Sarah pointed, urging Emily to follow. But as they moved toward the light, a familiar coldness wrapped around them again, pulling tighter. It didn't matter, they had to reach the light. They stumbled closer, not daring to look back. Had they truly found a way out? Or was that just another shadow waiting for them to make a mistake? The question gnawed at Sarah's mind as they rushed toward the beam of light, her heart hammering against her chest. Would they ever see home again, or would the darkness keep closing in, ready to claim them when they least expected it? As they raced towards the flickering light, a palpable sense of dread engulfed Sarah. Each step felt like wading through molasses, thick with the weight of unseen eyes following them from the woods. The shadows writhed, whispering her name, taunting her. "Given we're so close. Don't listen, Mommy." Emily squeaked, her voice a thin thread of fear. Sarah shot her a glance, forcing herself to smile, but the tension in her throat swelled. The light ahead pulsed like a heartbeat, but it wasn't steady enough to feel safe. It flickered again, and the darkness behind them surged, an ominous wave crashing against their retreat. "Faster," Sarah urged, pushing Emily onward. The dirt road crunched underfoot, every noise a reminder of the things creeping closer. "Help!" She shouted into the void, desperate for a savior amidst the emptiness. The light drew nearer, a small shack becoming visible. Its windows shone with a soft yellow glow, a relief amidst the swallowing night. "Maybe we can hide in there," she said, her voice straining. "Just until it's safe." But as they approached, a chill seeped into the air, clinging to her skin. The door hung open on rusty hinges, creaking as if beckoning them closer. "Stay close to me, Emily," she warned, her motherly instincts igniting as her heart raced. Inside, the light revealed peeling wallpaper, dusty furniture, and fragmented memories trapped in spiderwebs. A clock ticked ominously in the corner, mocking their stillness. Time felt suspended. "Do you think anyone lives here?" Emily whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I don't know," Sarah murmured, peering out the window at the darkness encroaching. Panic twisted in her gut. "But it's better than being out there suddenly," a low growl echoed through the room, making her blood run cold. Sarah's heart jumped, and she turned quickly, body tensing. The shadows shifted as if alive, coiling around unseen bodies. Then she saw it. A figure loomed just outside the door, obscured by darkness. Its shape was distorted, flickering like the flame of a candle under a gust of wind. Sarah's mind raced, weighing her options, aware that every decision could bind them deeper in this nightmare. "Mommy, I'm scared," Emily's whisper cut through her thoughts, a haunting reminder of her promise to keep her safe. The growl intensified, seconds stretching into lifetimes. "What is it?" "I don't know," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "We need to be quiet." But the figure stepped into the light spilling from the shack, and horror twisted Sarah's stomach. It was a ghostly semblance of a woman, eyes hollow and dark like the void around them. Her mouth stretched into a ghastly smile, a predator's delight. "You should not have come here," the figure rasped, her voice echoed, filling the room with a heavy darkness that pressed against them. Before Sarah could react, a sound shattered the night, a blood-curdling scream from deep in the woods echoed through the clearing. It was a sound so raw, so filled with anguish, that it sent shivers racing up Sarah's spine. "Mommy! What was that?" Emily clung to her, panic etched on her small face. "Stay behind me!" Sarah shouted as the shadows seemed to pulse. The woman's eyes glinted with menace. "Join us," she hissed, stretching her fingers toward them. The air was thick, suffocating and brimming with dark energy. A choice crashed into Sarah like a wave, a sickening realization that the forest wasn't just an expanse of trees, but a trap woven with sinister intentions. "We have to go. Now." Grabbing Emily's hand, Sarah turned toward the door, the shack seeming to stretch further away. Behind her, the woman's laugh rippled through her ears, worming into her mind. "Flee as you might, the night will always find you." They stumbled out into the night, but the path had shifted again, the road twisting, transforming before them into unfamiliar terrain. Shadows writhed at the edges of her vision, clamoring for retribution. "Come on," Sarah urged, pulling Emily along, heart racing. Could they outrun the darkness? Or were they spiraling closer to some dark unknown, as the shadows engulfed their escape? A new dread settled in, a realization that they were not just being hunted, they were part of something much darker, something watching and waiting, ready to strike when they least expected it. What waited in the forest was far from over, and the true horror was only beginning. They ran, the darkness clinging to their skin like wet rags. A cold wind howled through the trees, adding an eerie soundtrack to their frantic escape. Each step was heavy, like wading through water, and every rustle in the brush sent jolts of fear down Sarah's spine. "Mommy, I can't run anymore," Emily panted, her small legs trembling. "Just a little further, sweetie. I promise." Sarah's breath was ragged, desperation seeping into her words. They had to find a way out of this endless nightmare. Ahead, the trees parted slightly, revealing a glimmer of moonlight spilling onto the ground. But as they stumbled toward that sliver of light, a rustling erupted from the underbrush, sharp and menacing, like claws scratching against bark. Sarah halted, instinctively pulling Emily closer. The woods had come alive with whispers, vile and low, echoing her fears. "Please, quit playing games," she muttered, unsure if she meant to the shadows or to herself. Her heart thudded like a drum signaling the end of a race. Each pulse was a reminder of the danger hot on their trail. "Mommy, what's in there?" Emily pointed toward the gap in the thickets, her wide eyes reflecting both innocence and sheer terror. I don't know," Sarah admitted, straining to hear through the cacophony of unseen fright. "But we can't stay here." With one last glance back, dread pooled in her stomach. From the shadows, a figure stepped slowly into view. It was another woman, this one less ghostly than the last but much more real. Her face twisted in a grimace, eyes wide and wild. "Help me!" she screamed, the plea mingling with madness. Her hair was a tangle of dirt and leaves, her clothes tattered, smeared with grime as if she had crawled from the ground itself. "Run!" Sarah screamed, shoving Emily forward, but her feet froze. The desperate cries of the woman beckoned to them like a siren's song amid a storm. Something primal and painful pulled at Sarah's chest. "Mommy, she needs help," Emily protested, her innocence clashing against the urgency of survival. "That's not help, it's a trap." Sarah yanked on Emily's arm. The woman's gaze snapped to them, eyes narrowing like a predator spotting prey. "You don't want to get caught in her web. Move." Still, the woman lurched toward them with a raw scream that pierced through the night. "Save me. Please." They bolted into the woods, branches snagging at their clothes like fingers trying to pull them back. Ahead, the faint light from a distant cabin flickered again, a beacon promising some semblance of safety. It was farther than it appeared, an illusion of hope cloaked in despair. "Keep going," Sarah urged, though every limb felt leaden. Emily stumbled, nearly falling. Fear gripped Sarah's heart as she caught her daughter. Hold on tight. They pushed deeper into the forest, the twisted branches overhead entwined like claws aiming to trap them. Each step bore the weight of growing despair. Shadows flickered behind, looming shapes that whispered her name, gnawing at her sanity. Just then, Emily yanked free and pointed behind them. "Mommy! Look!" Sarah turned to see the woman still following, her face now warped into a mask of sheer terror. "They're coming. Don't let them take you." Before Sarah could respond, the forest erupted in chaos. The rustling intensified, merging with high-pitched wails that cut the air like glass. Shadows converged, creeping toward the woman, shrouding her in darkness. She screamed again, a sound that climbed higher in pitch and fell into a silence so profound it made Sarah's skin crawl. Suddenly, in the eerie stillness, a tree snapped in half, echoing like gunfire, and Sarah realized how close the malevolent force was. Instinct took over as she seized Emily's hand once again. There was no time to consider anything except the dreadful urgency of flight. They sprinted toward the light, breathless and battered, as the shadows twisted and curled just beyond reach, determined and endless. But as they neared the cabin, doubt clawed at Sarah's resolve. What if it wasn't he helping hands that awaited them? What if this was just another trap, set to ensnare them deeper in the darkness? With the glow growing brighter, a chilling scream erupted behind, one that was unmistakably human, piercing the air and freezing Sarah's heart. "Mommy! What are we going to do?" Emily's voice trembled, pulling Sarah back from the brink of panic. "I don't know, baby, but we're not done yet." Where the path led next was unclear, but desperation was their only guide in the suffocating night. As they lurched toward the door, a shadow broke away from the trees and lunged forward, a silhouette swallowing the last remaining light. The woods were alive. And they weren't done hunting yet. What waited inside the cabin could be worse than what pursued them. The door was just within reach, but the terror pursuing them crashed through the underbrush, relentless and furious. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage as she pushed Emily ahead. "Open it!" she screamed, praying it wasn't locked. With trembling fingers, Emily grabbed the handle, her small hands slick with sweat. She pulled, but the door wouldn't budge. A low growl emanated from the shadows behind them. They were so close, yet so far. The light seemed to flicker like a dying flame, and with each second that passed, dread spiraled into despair. "Please, please," Sarah urged, panic clawing at her throat. "You can do it, just pull harder." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she yanked again. There was a creak, and then a sudden burst, the door swinging open into darkness, stretching out like a gaping maw. They tumbled inside, and the door swung shut behind them with a thud that echoed like a death knell. Inside, the atmosphere was stale and oppressive. Dust motes danced in the dim light that spilled through the grungy windows. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with jars of what could only be described as unidentifiable substances. A faint smell of decay hung in the air, mingling with something sharp and metallic. "Mommy, I don't like it here," Emily whispered, gripping Sarah's hand with a frightful urgency. "Neither do I," Sarah replied, her voice a hoarse whisper. Terror pulsed through her veins. They had traded one nightmare for another. "But we need to stay quiet. We can't let them know we're in here." As they huddled near the door, Sarah scanned the room, searching for any means of escape. The shadows seemed to stretch and breathe, coiling like predators watching their prey. An odd sound splintered the silence, like muffled voices murmuring, but the words were lost, swallowed in the heavy air. "Mommy?" Emily looked up, her face pale and pinched with fear. "What if they find us?" Sarah crouched down, meeting her daughter's terrified gaze. "We won't let that happen," she assured, but her own mind echoed with uncertainty. She remembered the woman outside, her wild eyes, and the screams that had filled the night. What if that same madness lurked in here? Then, from deep within the cabin, a heavy footfall resonated. It was slow, deliberate, and it sent a jolt of horror coursing through Sarah. The air felt thick, like time had stopped. "Stay here," she urged reluctantly, forcing her limbs to move as she stepped cautiously toward the source of the sound. The shadows deepened as she edged closer, heart drumming in her ears. Her hand brushed against something slick, another jar, covered in dust but still ominously intact. A chill ran down her spine. Was it blood? She stepped back, her breath hitching in her throat. The footfall came again, closer this time, shuffling and dragging. Fear twisted in her stomach. Shadows elongated, stretching across the floor toward her, like fingers trying to grasp her. Sarah spun around, desperation gripping her as she looked for Emily, who was peeking out from behind a worn armchair. "Mommy!" Emily cried, her face pale, her voice quavering. In that instant, the door creaked loudly as though something was testing how to get inside. It was an unmistakable warning that whatever was out there was still on their trail. "What are you doing?" Sarah practically hissed, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her further into the room. "You need to hide." Just then, the window shattered, sending shards of glass raining down like deadly confetti. A dark shape loomed in the doorway, silhouetted against the night. A figure stepped forward, the glint of sharp teeth visible even in the dim light. A chilling grin spread across its face as it stepped into the room. "Found you," it rasped, and the world around Sarah spun into chaos. With no time left to think, she tightened her grip on Emily, heart pounding as they darted towards the stairs leading to the basement. Down was the only option left, but as they descended into the dark void, a question echoed in Sarah's mind: would it be a sanctuary or a tomb? As the last step creaked beneath them, a voice slithered through the shadows. "You thought you could escape?" The darkness grinned at her. What waited below might prove worse than the hunt above. The basement air was thick and cold, an unsettling contrast to the panic still racing through Sarah's veins. She held Emily tightly as they descended, the weight of their footsteps swallowed by the darkness. The dampness clung to them, seeping into their clothes, making every shiver feel like fingers tracing down their spines. "I can't see anything," Emily protested, her voice small and trembling with fear. "Just stay close to me," Sarah whispered, trying to sound brave despite the fear that gnawed at her inside. Each breath felt like a desperate gasp. "We'll find a light." As she scanned the murky space, shadows danced dangerously around them, twisting and turning as though alive. "Mommy?" Emily's whisper was barely audible. "What if it follows us?" A distant thud echoed from above, grounding her horror. It was the unmistakable sound of something heavy landing against the floorboards. Closer. Too close. She glanced back toward the stairs, dread freezing her momentarily. They were trapped in this darkness, hunted like prey. Panic flooded her system as she squinted into the blackness ahead, searching for anything that could help. Her fingers brushed against the cold, rough concrete wall, her pulse a wild drumbeat in her ears. "There has to be a light switch," she murmured barely to herself, and then it came, another step from above, this time accompanied by an angry growl, low and guttural. The kind that sent chills racing through her. She realized the creature was no longer just a shadow, it was stepping down, trying to get to them. "Come on," she urged Emily forward, leading her deeper into the basement. They skirted around old furniture, trying to find anything they could use as a shield or a weapon. "Mommy, I see something," Emily squealed, pointing to a faded shape in the distance. "Wait," Sarah hissed, grabbing her arm. "We can't rush, we need to be careful." Drawing closer, a flickering light bulb hung from the ceiling, swaying gently as if someone had bumped it just moments ago. Sarah reached for the string and pulled. The bulb flickered erratically, then burst into life, bathing the basement in a dim, sickly glow. The sight sent a shiver down her spine. Rusting tools lay scattered on a workbench, strange instruments that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi horror film. But what caught her eye was a door at the far end, half hidden behind piles of yellowed newspapers and dusty crates. "Mommy, what is that?" Emily asked, pointing. "It might be a way out," Sarah said, her heart racing with newfound urgency. They moved toward the door, but the moment she reached for the handle, icy dread washed over her. "Wait!" Emily shrieked, clutching her mother's arm, her eyes wide with terror. "What is it?" Sarah snapped. Then they heard it, the unmistakable sound of something dragging across the floor above. It was heavy, slow, and deliberate. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, and instinctively, she pulled Emily closer, feeling her tiny body tremble against her. "Mommy," a whisper, so faint and filled with dread. "We have to be quiet," Sarah whispered back, her heart thundering with every sound. "Just hold on." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from above, the sound of wood splintering. Their chance of escape was right there, but they could feel the darkness closing in around them, pressing against their skin like a vice. "It's coming!" Emily cried, and Sarah's heart sank. "Ready?" Sarah asked, forcing herself to take a breath. She nodded toward the door. They couldn't stay here. They had to risk it, had to push through. But as they turned back to the door, it creaked open slowly on its own, revealing a pitch-black corridor beyond. The shadows seemed to beckon them forward, but what lay ahead could be far worse than the hunted breathing behind. They were on the precipice, teetering on the edge of horror. What is that?" Emily whimpered, peering into the void, her innocence hanging by a thread. Sarah's heart raced. "We need to find out," she whispered, as the corridor seemed to call their names. But what would they discover? As they hesitated, a whisper brushed against their ears, filled with promises of doom. "Join us." The darkness waited, hungry. As fear tightened around them, Sarah felt her fingers tremble at the thought of what lurked in the corridor. The shadows behind them pressed close, hungry for warmth, but she couldn't falter. "We have to go," she urged Emily, her voice barely above a whisper. She grasped her daughter's hand, feeling the small pulse of life against her palm, a fierce reminder of what she had to protect. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped into the darkness, dragging Emily behind her. The air grew heavier, pressing against her lungs. "We need light," she said, her voice cracking. "We can't let it take us." But the moment they crossed the threshold, a cold breeze swept through the corridor, wrapping around them like a shroud. The darkness seemed to breathe, a living entity clawing at her resolve. An echoing voice whispered, "Join us." Sarah shook her head violently. "No. I will not." The cry came from a place deep within, igniting a fire she didn't know she had. "We're stronger than this." With every step, the shadows clawed at her, insistent, but her grip on Emily tightened. "Mommy, I can't see." Emily's voice trembled, but it brought clarity to Sarah. They needed a way to shift the power, to fight against the shadows. "Hold on to me." Sarah pressed forward, focusing on the distant glimmer of light that began to break through the thick darkness. It was faint, but it glowed like hope peeking through a storm. As they moved, they stumbled over piles of debris, remnants of forgotten memories, the lives lost to the forest's malevolence. Each crunch of the broken glass beneath them felt like a countdown. Panic surged in her chest. "Stay close, Em." Suddenly, something landed hard behind them, a thud echoing through the corridor. Whispers morphed into chaotic screams. Shadows rolled against the walls, furious and relentless. "Get back!" Sarah screamed, pulling Emily tighter. She could feel the darkness breath hot against her skin, the tendrils reaching out, trying to separate them. But they would not be broken. "Hold on, Emmy. We're almost there," Sarah urged, racing towards the light. With fear fueling her, she hurried through the corridor, dodging as the very shadows seemed to claw at her hair, whispering vile things, desperate to drag them back into despair. Just as they neared the end, Sarah felt a cold grip wrap around her ankle, pulling her down. "No!" she screamed, netting down to yank it free when Emily screamed. "Mommy!" Sarah squinted against the overwhelming dark and spotted Emily standing, tears streaming down her face, eyes wide with fear as shadows closed in. The child was hesitating at the threshold. "Come on, Emmy. It's okay, I'm almost there. Join us." The shadows hissed, their voices layered in maddening harmony. "Mommy." Emily called again, but before Sarah could fully react, her daughter was pulled away, just a fluttering shadow, vanishing into the void of despair. "Emily!" Panic burst from Sarah's throat, a primal scream echoing through the corridor. It tore through the darkness and flooded her with fear stronger than any tendril. Fueled by adrenaline and the fierce need to protect her daughter, Sarah surged forward. She felt the shadows clawing against her, burning her skin, but she pushed through. "No! I want to let you take her." The light grew brighter, pulsing against her despair, wrapping around her like a warm breeze. With each ounce of strength, she forced her way forward. "I'm coming, Emmy. Just hold on. I'm coming." The shadows shrieked in rage, their furious cries echoing in her ears as she reached a final wall, bathed in golden light, summoning her courage. Sarah burst through, collapsing into the light with a gasp of air, feeling the shadows recoil, hissing and screeching behind her. "Mommy!" Emily's voice bubbled through the chaos, bringing Sarah back to life. The small figure stood in the radiant glow, safe and alive, tears sparkling like diamonds on her usually bright face. "Emmy!" Sarah rushed forward, enveloping her daughter in a fierce embrace, the warmth spreading throughout her body, washing away the darkness lingering inside her soul. They had escaped the shadows, but not without scars. But as seconds turned to minutes and they caught their breath, the darkness began to fade, and the shadows writhed just beyond the light. The figures loomed, twisting in agony, unable to breach the barrier. "You can't hide forever!" they screamed, their voices desperate yet tinged with bitterness. "Maybe not." Sarah turned towards Emily, tilting her chin. "But we found the strength to fight. Together." In that moment, the sun's warm glow broke through the horizon, illuminating their surroundings, pushing the shadows back into the woods. The silhouettes of Pine Hollow quivered at the break of dawn, small, defeated. "Let us go home, honey," Sarah said softly, her heartful gaze lingering on her daughter's eyes, bright and hopeful once more. As they walked toward what they could now see was a beautiful future ahead, light chased away the terror they had survived. Together, they stepped away from the darkness, leaving the horrors of Pine Hollow behind them. And standing at the threshold of a new day, they vowed never to look back, for their strength was no longer mere instinct, it was forged in the fires of darkness and completed by love. But deep in the shadows of Pine Hollow, the whispers grew fainter. For in every light, shadows lingered, and the darkness would always wait for its next chance to take. If you enjoyed this thrilling conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help more folks discover this adventure. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how it all ends. Your support is crucial, and only true fans understand the importance of these actions. Let's build this amazing community together.